I like that smell actually. It always reminds me of looking at paintings in the Uffizi gallery. There's so many gringo tourists that are getting their fill of garlic for the first time in a long time. Is that your book, Roy?
Yeah, I just picked that up at the bookstore at the wharf.
What is it?
It's by a gal whose expertise is how we're exporting arms all around the world and undermining democracies that way. But she's written a few other interesting books. This one is her argument that Chinese democracy and method of economics is superior to ours. So even though I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, I find it very interesting. Her writing is fantastic. So yeah. I just grabbed it and read it on the ferry on the way over.
Oh man, really, I'm going to be on the spot here.
Yeah. I thought it is Antonio Bologna.
Do I have anything protruding from my nose at this point?
Well, it's Doug Wilder with Purely Domestic Wine Report, and we are now sitting down with Aaron Pott in a secret location, tasting through 7 stones, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So
in the bunker, thousands of feet under the ground.
You saw that Hitler video too. So I've had chances to taste these wines, several of these wines, I think 5, 6, and 7, and maybe 8 out of barrel. But this is going to be a treat to walk through them with Aaron and have him describe, hopefully, some of the influence of the vineyards that we just saw in the earlier videos.
Wow, there's a lot of intensity here.
Yeah, he's been open for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
Double decanted.
Yeah, they're really popping out of the glass. Really got that black truffle character, and
right.
5 really shows off. It's kind of a real signature of 7 Stones, I think, that a really nice black truffle character, and then the black currant. It's almost like a fennel.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that in there.
The 5. Really black licorice fennel kind of character.
One of the things I think I'll do is I'll go back and I'll look at the earlier notes as well and include those impressions.
Yeah, that was the idea, I think, because you'd already tasted a few, so might as well retry everything and get a reference point.
Yeah.
I was looking at your notes the other day.
Oh, it's so soft.
My impression is the 5 is the first one. I think it's actually starting to entering a real drinking window, really.
Yeah, it's really very soft. Beautiful, the tannins are like velvet there. Pretty beautiful grain. I remember that when we first put that in the bottle, it was a little bit rough and seemed rustic for about the first year, and then after a year, it really softened out, and now it's really come around. It's right at perfect drinking stage. It's pretty.
I'm sure the people who have it in their cellars are pretty thankful that they have it now.
Yeah, I mean these, and I'd like to think that most of the wines that I make are made for keeping a little while. I mean, I like wines. I like older wines myself. And it's nice to go back and look at things that you've made 5, 10, 15, 20 years after you made them, and remember that bit of sunshine from that vintage.
Mm-hmm.
I took a case of the 05 out of Ron's locker to Arkansas when I was down there, and by the time it was over, a lot of people were asking if they could get any. I'm like, sorry,
Yeah.
all gone.
5 and 6 are really close. I mean, they're very similar in their nose and mouthfeel, I think. Six is maybe a little bit more tobacco. You really get that black truffle character, but real tobacco-y nose behind that.
I'm actually wondering, because we always, in the young wines, when they have a red fruit streak, I wonder if that's what's turning into the truffle as they start to get a little older, is the red that used to be in it. I really like the mouthfeel of this thing.
The 5's a little fuller. I mean, it has a little bit more. It's as if the mid palate's a little more buttressed by the tannin than the 6. The 6 is a little leaner in the finish.
A little more vertically stacked. In the
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Aromatically, it's really bouncing out of the glass.
It's quite attractive.
I think I remember your notes, Doug, on the 06s, the idea that needed a few years, which I think is what everyone has kind of thought, and I think it's continually, slowly, and steadily improving.
It needs about 5 more years, I'd say. I mean, I think it's going to be great in 5 years. It's funny, the 6s as a vintage, they were really huge as young wines, and they had a lot of baby fat, and I was really optimistic that there was going to be a fantastic vintage, and then all of a sudden the wines just lost that really beautiful baby fat, and they became very lean in the last sort of year of aging in barrel.
That happened all over the valley too. I noticed that everywhere, even Schaefer, I noticed that happened, and no one knows why it happened. So, but because I remember during harvest, I was thinking this is a better vintage than 05 was, and then by the time it'd been in barrel for a year, you started to see something change. So.
I think the issue we're going to see with the 5s is the people that controlled their yields best in 2005 made great wines because it was an abundant crop. I mean, it was ridiculous. Remember, it was the biggest crop we ever did at Quintessa. Huge.
And when you did the count, estimating what the crop was, and it looked like it was going to be 3.5 tons, it turned into 5 by the time it was picked. And
I had people calling me to use tanks that year. 3 tanks? Wines. Yeah, suddenly the Napa Valley became very sort of farmer-like, friends calling friends, looking for tanks and so on.
Wasn't 97 like that too?
Yeah, it was a very abundant vintage. I don't know about that because I was making wine in Saint-Emilion then, but it's a very abundant vintage. And I think the problem with those vintages where you didn't control the yields is that the wines are pretty short-lived. In 2005 couldn't have been any better in terms of weather. We didn't have a single day over 100 degrees the whole year, and then a really beautiful weather during the harvest. So it was a terrific vintage in terms of conditions for growing, but just that extra yield on the vines made a huge difference. And I think at 7 Stones we were tiny yields, enforced tiny yields, and that really made the difference with this 5 because it's really got a lot of density.